Okay, I'd like to call tonight's Lower McConkey Township Board of Commissioners Workshop Meeting to order. If we'd all please stand for a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item number one, it's actually item number two. Review plan for Valley at Indian Creek, 3510 McConkey Road, subdivision and land development. Mr. Jones.
Yes, sir. So this is a plan that's been around, bandied about with the Planning Commission for quite some time. We've looked at several different iterations over the last couple of years on how to have this lot per the desire of the developer to get it subdivided. They were looking at townhomes at one point. There were older plans with frontage out onto McConkey Road, and there was even a point where they were looking at doing multiple shared driveways with multiple units, which we thought would be pretty problematic and set a bad precedent. So the applicant appeared before the zoning hearing board asking for relief from the zoning ordinance to be able to put in the loop road that you see there, which is reminiscent of a lot of other lots that we have in the township where it's smaller, but we're still trying, but the developer is still trying to get habitable lots in there. It's 22 total. I should note that this would be a subdivision that is going to be heavily reliant upon its homeowners association for stormwater management. You can see there's a trail over there on the side that leads into the abutting park over by Watermill. They will have frontage trails as well as sidewalks. On the landscaping plan, there's a pretty strong buffer along McConkey Road for the privacy of residents 14 through 22. And then you can see there as well that the planting plan for the stormwater management area is incredibly generous, and that is because they're also looking to get credits for both their NPDES permit and the fact that there will be a couple of trees on site that will need to be taken down and they'll have to replace them. Because of the size and scale of the site, I should note that we normally require street trees to be planted in between the sidewalk and the curb. And in this case, because of the size of the lots, we are recommending on the back side of the sidewalk, and we've been very careful about the selection of trees to make sure that they don't become too big or intrusive. And then last but not least, probably one of the most important points, if not the most important point, is, and I'll allow Solicitor Bruman to speak to this a little bit further, in order to make their stormwater management work, there has been a offer for the acquisition of the basin that is currently on parkland to be utilized by the stormwater management of the proposed development. The township is essentially getting or actually relieving itself of that liability and maintenance requirement. It goes to the HOA. The HOA would then manage it as part of their approval process, and we would go forward from there. There are several frontage improvements that will need to be made on McConkey Road and Indian Creek, including some piping and whatnot that has to do with stormwater management. But by and large, this has spent so much time in front of staff and the Planning Commission that this is about, we feel, as good as this site, this lot to be able to be developed will get. So I'm happy to take any questions. Brian, if you have any engineering comments, please feel free to share. And if anybody has questions about the basin acquisition, David and Mark were kind enough to help us out with that.
Thanks. We have an open review letter from April of this year. As Nate had said, we kind of have been working with these guys for quite a while, trying to nail down certain things. The biggest issue really was the detention basin, the ownership and maintenance. And once that was addressed, or while that was being addressed, I should say, we were continuing to work on the nuts and bolts parts of the design. There's still some outstanding issues, but none of them can't be fairly readily addressed. The biggest issue really was, what did they really intend to do for the ownership and maintenance of the stormwater management? Because as you can imagine, it was the fact that they wanted to modify an existing township-owned basin was kind of a bold move. And once that was nailed down, it, I think, became something that will be beneficial for both parties. As I said, they do have some things to work out. They're going to need a PennDOT permit. There are still some minor, very minor engineering and drafting things to address, but all in all, the landscaping and the trail stuff and just the general design components of this have been worked out to the point where we're comfortable recommending to the board that we're good if they get a conditional approval, and we will then proceed to move forward with nailing down the final items with them.
Anything Solicitor Berman to add?
Not really. I think the idea of them purchasing a basin came from the Board of Commissioners, but in any event, we were able to do that because the appraisal came in at about $2,000 or $3,000 under 6, which is the public bid threshold. And then they prepared a lot consolidation plan, which is pretty much what Nate put on that board, only, engineered plan that Brian reviewed. And there is a benefit to them taking over the basin. So they're going to pay us $2,000. We're going to give them that land, and they're going to maintain the basin in perpetuity.
Commissioner Robert?
Okay, so I got confused at looking at the stuff for the detention pond. Okay, so we're gonna sell them the 1 acre detention pond for $2,000 some dollars. Also in the resolution, there's a thing of them offering for dedication the passive recreation area, which includes the detention pond. But it doesn't include the 1.1 acres that the township is selling to them. So the way I see it, yeah, they can offer the dedication and we don't have to take it, so they can keep ownership of it. But then if we wanted to take ownership of it, we could exercise the offer of dedication, but we would get their part of the detention pond, but not the part that we sold to them. And so is that correct?
I'm not sure what language you're looking at, but the 1.1 acres that is going to be transferred to them for $2,000 stands on its own.
Well, okay, but there's a 4.39 acres offered with an offer of dedication. And it seems like it ought to be a 5.39 something if they are going to be offering it for if they're offering all of the detention pond for dedication to the township.
They're offering it. It doesn't mean we need to accept it, and we can strike it if the board is not interested in receiving dedication. Frankly, it would be better for it to be managed by the HOA. I do know that just for safety's sake, making sure that the township does have the ability to maintain that land in the future if something were to go wrong with the HOA is in our best interest and the best interest of the taxpayers. But similar to offering of dedication or ultimate right of way, we do not necessarily have to receive it if we're not interested.
Okay, but my point is that the 1.1 acres if they're offering the rest of the stuff, the 1.1 acres ought to be included with that so that we get back the entire detention pond if we ever decide we want to accept it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question about accepting or not accepting. I think the question is the discrepancy between the number.
Yeah, it's item 19. 19 in the resolution, 4.39 acres.
But Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, the 4.39 are mutually exclusive of 1.11.
But so if we did take the 4.39, the homeowner, we would not be able to get title to the 1.1. And so we would not be able to take title to the entire detention pond.
The way this was set up is once you transfer the 1.1 and they take over the basin, you're correct. They have it for life.
Right.
There's no dedication back.
So I think what Commissioner Robert is saying, would it make sense for them to purchase the 1.1 and then as part of the dedication back, add that 1.1 to the 4.9, so that if something ever happened, we have access,
Or the reverse of that,
or the reverse of it.
remove the basin area of the 4.39 and just take the open space on the dedication so that the basin stays together.
I just think the most important thing we should note is that we're having them offer it. It does not mean that we're taking it right now. It's our expectation that the HOA is going to manage it. It's just by them offering it. If something goes wrong, we have the right to come in. That way it doesn't get overrun or become a problem.
But
if
we only have
something
Nate, the right then per this to take and maintain half of a basin. We need to make sure we either
Yeah.
include it
It's
or
not-
exclude.
And I don't think that the question isn't whether we should take it or not. That's a whole separate question. It's, should it all be included as one number? Because the way it stands right now, if we were to accept that 4.9, the 1.1, we would not have access into.
Yeah, we need to confirm the description of the deed description for the
Right.
entire stormwater lot. In item 19.
I don't think it's a huge thing. It's just a matter of making sure the math works out correctly.
So anyway, just bringing it up so that it could be resolved before we take action.
I still want to keep 19 and 20 separate. I want to keep this
Yeah.
basin separate. I can add another sentence to 20, which would contemplate a future dedication. Even though I can't imagine a reason in the world why you want it.
Right.
The other thing that you have or will have is a drainage easement into this basin so that you can discharge your water.
We're also, just everybody, so everybody knows, we're getting just shy of $80,000 in rec fees for this development.
And how much in traffic impact fees?
Ryan?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what Commissioner Roberts said.
The
How
traffic
much in
impact fee,
traffic
Brian.
impact fees?
The traffic impact fee is on the order of $60,000. Bear with me a sec. Bu- 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 It's $60,288, this traffic impact fee.
Okay. Okay, the next item is there's a walkway that leads from that development into the, what is it? Watermill.
In the playground area.
Yeah, the Watermill Playground area. Yeah, where that cursor is. And at the planning commission meeting, it came up that they are only planning on putting the path to the property line and that it would fall on the township to put it the rest of it.
No, Maury, you can see it right there. They are doing, if you look where Renee's cursor is, it does show connectivity. They are connecting it to the loop trail.
Okay, so that entire part is going to be constructed by them?
That part is going to be constructed by them. Yes.
Part that's not on their property.
Yes, they have noted that they are going to have that connectivity to the trail. They were going to the end of the property line and we said that is not advantageous. Then they agreed to extend it to connect to the trail.
Okay. Next question is the road. We had previously concluded that a homeowners association with less than 40 homes wasn't big enough to be able to support the maintenance of a road, and so we would be willing to accept the road as a public road. And this one is being kept private. And why wouldn't we accept it?
The applicant.
I think the road came about by virtue of all the other things the homeowner association has to maintain: open space, paths, stormwater. If you strip out roads, guess you have to strip out everything.
Huh?
If you strip out roads, you'd have to strip out everything.
Why?
Because you still have a homeowners association under 40 that's got to maintain.
Well,
they voluntarily offered to have the road be private as the developer.
Okay,
And
but,
it does, and the street design doesn't meet township design standards. However, they are offering it for dedication with the full width of the right of way. That way, in a similar case, we always have it available. This was a case where they actually came to us and said that they would have the road be private.
okay, so my concern is that it would be overburdensome for the homeowners association to maintain the entire pond plus the road and all of that stuff. So,
I guess it depends on what they're charging for their homeowners association.
well,
Yeah, I mean, it may be overburdensome for the person buying the house because they're gonna have to spend a fortune to do it. And listen, I'm on record as I don't like private roads. I don't want private roads. I'd rather have it built to our specs and us take care of it because at some point the HOA probably will fail. And then we get a road that's possibly in disrepair. But that being said, I think it falls on them to charge enough to take care of it.
Didn't they say they were gonna build it to our?
Well, they just said they're not because
Oh,
it's a
they're
private
not.
road.
They needed to get some waivers because of the curvature of the road and whatnot.
Yeah, I just looked it up on the plan that the road paving cross-section will be compliant with township ordinance standards. They're gonna have curb and sidewalk, and the only thing really that, as it relates to the road itself, the only thing that isn't 100% compliant is the two radii at either end. And that was really it.
Harris York is one example of something similar to this with single-family homes and in a condominium environment. And their condominium fees several years ago were like $900
Yeah.
a month.
They could be expensive. There's lots
And
of them.
so it doesn't seem fair to the homeowners for us not to take the dedication of the road.
We wouldn't take it. It's not built to ours.
Right. Well,
But it
We wouldn't
is.
take- No, they are.
it is to a point. It's not specific, it's not exactly because of the curvature. What I would say is, I don't know that it's our responsibility as to what is right to the homeowner if the homeowner chooses to buy that land and knowing the price. In reality, in totality, I think it's our responsibility as taxpayers to take care of what they're paying their taxes for. And they pay taxes to have their streets cleaned when it snows. And in every one of these little developments, if we don't take the street, they're now paying more than the average citizen for something they don't get. That's a whole different argument. In this case, I don't see why, I don't understand, David, you can explain this better to me. I don't understand why they can't have a homeowners association that takes care of open space, everything but the roads. You know, if the homeowners takes care of their trash collection because they have a private carding for them, but we still have to clean the roads because of snow. I don't see why the homeowners association just would not include that part of it in what they offer.
I agree.
I got a question. Wouldn't they have to build it, though, in that scenario, build it with the radii
Well,
to
that's-
our spec?
That's my next question.
They'd have to redesign it.
They would. So they got relief for the radii, because that was how they were able to fit in the loop road. Because there was original concerns about frontage on McCungy Road with multiple driveways, shared driveways. At one point, they were looking at, and they did not receive zoning relief for townhomes, which would have given them sufficient frontage, but they wouldn't have had the loop road. They needed to get approval for this loop road, and they recognized that when they did that, to get this layout, which was a layout that was more palatable to the neighbors and more palatable to others who were concerned about it, that they were also, again, going to have to take ownership of it.
Now-
So they've come in and said, we know it doesn't meet township standards. We're going to own it as part of this. And that's how they were able to get the layout that you see before you right now, which is probably like the fourth iteration of layouts we've seen.
Mhm.
And the one that has had pushback from abutters or others of concern.
So it's basically as close to township standards as it can be based on the configuration.
And with a waiver from the zoning hearing board to allow it to be that in order to get that road. I mean, they literally had to.
Well,
get
wait a minute, is that a waiver, is it a waiver or a variance?
They need,
Sorry, variance.
they needed to do this, they need waivers and variances.
That this was their path,
Yeah.
get this approved,
Right. To
and
get,
they can make it a private.
Well,
right.
so is the 100 radius a waiver or a variance?
It's a waiver. The
Okay.
curve,
Waiver.
the road center line radii, that's a Saldo waiver from the
And
design.
so that's one of the waivers that's included in the resolution to grant that because of the configuration of the lot, that it's so narrow.
The zoning hearing board was for lot factors that were affected by the shape of the road, for the lots to be able to be this way then.
So I would recommend that we accept the road and have the homeowners association deal with it.
Well, and that's something we can handle when the ordinance comes. You know, you can make a motion to accept it or to approve the ordinance with accepting the roads. Or you can make a motion to accept the ordinance with not owning the roads, or someone else could. I don't know if it necessarily, do we necessarily negotiate that out now?
Well, I was gonna add two things to this discussion. One, this was a long, drawn out, almost negotiation because they had nowhere to go with their stormwater and it was a dead project. If we had not taken their stormwater off their hands by giving them our property in a very creative solution, they wouldn't have a project. The road came about as a virtue of that, as well as the open space and stormwater for the HOA to maintain. The reason, Brian, that won't work in terms of denying dedication down the road is because what I was going to say is the way to protect the homeowner is through the declaration and to make sure there's adequate disclosure in the declaration of all the things they have to maintain with estimates of cost. Then if somebody buys into it, they bought into it, eyes wide open. So that's the onus on the developer and then on us to review it. And I think that does protect the homeowner, the
But
person
then-
that buys in.
But then they are paying taxes for, that assume that services like snow removal and street sweeping and leaf pickup and all of that
But
stuff.
that, of course, applies whether it's
Huh?
12 homes or 50 homes or 400 homes.
That
in the
applies
case
to
of
anybody that has
Merchtown.
private.
Right.
In most cases, and I'll be honest with you, in most cases, I don't mind it because private roads has historically been in 55 and older communities.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the residents don't pay an earned income tax. So they weren't paying the full amount of taxes anyway that cover those services. But now we're getting to the point where so many of these individual one-off subdivisions are becoming private roads. So now you're paying an earned income tax into something that you're not getting the benefit of. Now, you do get it on the major roads, but the majority of our major roads are state roads, and you still don't get the benefit there because they barely clean them half. So listen, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on because I've seen every iteration of this. Preferably, I like this development not to happen at all, but I know that that's not reasonable or practical. But it's better than what I've seen. But it's one of those, I don't disagree with Commissioner Robert on this. But if we're going to get a project that is probably the most feasible, most attractive, least impact, and this is what it takes to get it done, then that's what it takes to get it done.
To be frank, the alternative, in the best possible world, having a couple of these, a couple of frontages for a larger lot with single family home on here would be preferable. But like many of those right now who are looking to invest in their land on the development community side, they're looking to maximize the number of their lots. And this basically gave us a layout that we as the township would be okay with. Whereas an alternative would be a submission of a plan that didn't need any waivers at one point in time that would have shared driveways, and we would be looking at basically a lot layout that met our ordinances, but we were not comfortable with.
Well, the last two iterations of this were horrible, absolutely horrible, whether it was single family or town.
It took a long way to get it to this point. No question.
And the concern and the alternative of them providing an as of right plan that met the ordinances would leave us with something we really didn't want, so.
So what is the problem with us accepting the road?
I got one more thing. Would that set an example that we will accept roads that don't meet minimum radius?
Well, the radius is a minor thing.
Well, I think that's because of snow removal creates a problem, maneuvering trucks around.
And I would just,
That's why we have a minimum radius for our public works and service.
I would just add, not to interrupt anybody, but I would add, at least on the non-planning, non-legal side, on the management side, that's correct. That's the way I look at where we put these into here. If you're gonna need, or we're in a place where we want to accept a road, it should meet the township road standards so that we can offer those services that the residents pay for. And I'm sorry if the developer has to lose multiple lots to make that compliant. That's not our issue at the township. We want to offer service. There should be no waivers on the construction of roadways to make sure that we have a standardized process to deliver on that side of it.
And the other part of this too is to answer your question, Ron, I don't think it creates a bad precedent because we don't have a hard and fast rule on taking roads, not taking. We have trended towards not taking roads over the last several years. I've never voted to take a road, so it's never been a unanimous decision, but it's not like we have a policy that says you have to have your own roads. We'd like it, or the majority would like it. So I'm not worried about the precedent as much as I am about making sure that it is the right standard. Because here's my fear on a road that's not to the right standard. And I live on a street that 20 years ago was super wide. It was a super highway because it was built to our standards. Well, right now, 20 years later, where everybody has 3 kids and 7 cars, you can't drive down the street because people are parked on both sides of the street. You build a street like this that's not to our standards, and all of a sudden you're zigzagging down the street. Forget about plowing it and all that stuff. It becomes a bigger issue. So at that point, then yeah, I don't want to have responsibility for it because of what could happen liability-wise.
But standard wise,
Is it still the same width?
it is the width, it's the standard width for a local road, correct? Nate?
Yes, it is.
And so, and the thickness of the macadam and so forth, and the rock and all of that stuff meets the standards. They're putting in curbs that meet our standards. The only thing that's different is the radius of the turns.
Mhm.
And we can paint the radiuses with with yellow paint, and it shouldn't get any major issues associated with snow removal and so forth. So I am still in favor of acceptance of the road.
All right, so let's look at it this way. Commissioner Butler, heard from you, Commissioner Robert, Commissioner Ward, thoughts, feelings, impressions, imitations, anything you want to do. You want to do a set?
I'm kind of in the middle here with regard to the fact that I know that we've visited it. We've visited this quite a bit. And it seems like this was the most acceptable version of everything we've seen, according to professional staff, solicitor, our engineer. And I'm fine with leaving it as is. Let it be the HOA. And it seems like we went through all this to get to this point. So I don't know why we want to throw a wrench in the works at this juncture.
Mr. Shoemaker, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Ward. If they were granted a waiver to design the development the way it is, and the future homeowners are willing to pay the HOA fee.
They haven't been granted the waiver yet. it's part of the same resolution.
Yeah, they have to be granted waiver in the res.
Okay. Well, if they are granted the waiver and they're willing to accept the HOA, the homeowners buying are willing to accept it, I think that's, falls on them at this point.
Commissioner Bite?
I'm just gonna stick with what I said.
Okay.
It would have been initially, goal we were gonna take, we would have had to build a radius fence, so.
Okay.
So be it if they could have put 2, 3, or 4 less.
Right.
We do hold most developments.
Agreed. On this one, I'll stick with Commissioner Robert. However, that being said, it's, the majority would like to keep it as is. And we'll have to address it when it comes up for vote.
Just so that we're focused when it does come up, I think we're talking about paragraphs 31 and 32 of the resolution, correct?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I just don't know. I've been playing with it. I've been playing with it in case that's the direction you head. So,
We can clarify that just to make
Yeah.
sure.
yeah. And Commissioner Robert, if you want to give me a call, if there are any other that touch that issue, just give me a call.
Okay, next.
Next question.
Next item is, Nate, are you satisfied with the plantings in the 10-foot strip that's to simulate reverse frontage buffering?
Yeah, I am. They've recognized that their HOA is going to be relatively strong in that their design guidelines and whatnot are going to minimize backyards and what people can do there. And if Renee, you can pull up the landscape plan there, we are for the size and scale of it, we are satisfied.
Okay.
They've chosen species, and Brian and I will look at it one last time before it gets recorded, but they've basically chosen a lot of species that are going to grow tall but not too wide.
Okay. And Brian, last question. Associated with the detention pond, how are they going to handle having it be an active stormwater detention pond for the existing buildings while they're using part of it as a sediment pond for the new construction?
But once they start basically the demolition of the existing berm, that has to all be accounted for. So what would happen is the current detention basin aspect of the existing facility basically would go away during the course of construction. And then once it's restored, not restored, but once the construction is finished, the site is stabilized and the basin is converted to the permanent structure, then we get into the actual long-term release rate aspect of it. And it will be a naturalized basin. It will have appropriate water quality and volume control features in it that we currently don't have. But during that initial section, that initial period of time, to answer your question more directly, the basin will have to it's going to have to be reconstructed literally to remove part of the existing berm and build new section of berm over onto the applicant's property and create what will become the temporary sediment basin and ultimately the permanent basin.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay. Are there any other commissioner questions? All right. Moving on to item 3, discussion on West Coastville Recreation Center long-term future. Mr. Vital.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we have various staff members here this evening as well. Mr. Cups here, Ms. Gill's here, Denise and Jason from facilities. We just wanted to kind of put something in front of the board, get some feedback, see if we're in the right direction. One of the township facilities that we own and maintain for rental is the West Coastville Recreation Center up on Hamilton Boulevard. We've been in several discussions and staff has informed me over the last period that we've started to see issues that will need addressed at that facility. So what we did was we went out as a team. We also brought our facility engineers to kind of give us a quick overview of what it would take to get that facility where it needs to be. We're seeing roof leaks, things of that nature. Because of the roof leaks, we have cracking in the floor, we have some wall, issues. So this facility was, of course, designed to be a basement of a future church. That church, the second floor of the church never materialized. This was donated to the township as well as various land. It has a deed restriction, as we understand, to have components that it must be used for like a civic / government purpose. Jason's provided some various interior pictures of the things we've seen. He's also provided me with an extensive report of what we're finding there. So we had the cost estimate completed. And we think we'll be around, about $460,000 to, fix some ADA compliance, replace the roof, do some interior lighting and vinyl floor. You'll see this building's pretty original to its long history over there. And this is before certain items that we may have to address as well for other exits or additional exit discharges. So we wanted to have the discussion as we need some direction from the board, and it doesn't have to be this evening, just to kind of review, should we put the monies into this facility, keep it around? We understand it is definitely an option that residents use. We've seen out of the 54 rentals year to date, 43 of them were from Lower Macungie Township residents, 11 non-residents. However, it's at least my recommendation that we consider taking this facility down for several reasons. Number one, our rental income that we've seen on a regular basis there is about 20,000 for the year. Of that, the breakdown in utilities and maintenance is about 18,000 of that. So that doesn't account for the staff time at the recreation center to be dealing with bookings, making bookings, and dealing with the customer on that end. So for us, and they prepared an analysis on our other facilities and where these rentals and the rental area sits for us. At our, between the community center, but I would compare kind of Camp Olympic Barn, just for that's one of our nicer facilities. It's a larger facility. We're on pace there for about $28,000 in rentals so far this year. What our concern is, if we improve the building, we're definitely going to be in a different rental threshold, from our most economical rental to probably one of our most expensive. So are we really serving the residents in that component? For us to even recoup that, you're talking an additional, would have to make 40,000 a year plus the additional 20 that we make now, just to cover the cost over a 10-year period of making those improvements. There are some benefits, of course. There's some kids programming that runs there. It is a polling location. The Historical Society uses those bathrooms in there when they have an event at the log house. That's the positives for us. The negatives are, because we have rentals there on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, that does take the Wescosville softball fields out of commission for us a little bit, because they wouldn't then have parking. So we're giving up lighted fields, that additional recreation space, to make the rentals that we have there, occur. So we definitely have, a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. I'm just kind of looking for that situation. Everybody's here in case you have questions. They can speak to the facility, talk about rentals. Hopefully I kind of gave a fairly good overview of where we are. We did receive a cost to demo the building. That's about 18,000. That would allow us to have that area then without conflicted parking. That wouldn't give us like a paved lot or anything for that price. But we did also research that side of it.
Commissioner questions of staff, Mr. Vital.
Go ahead.
Mr. Shoemaker.
I just have a comment or question. So based on the cost and repairs that I'm seeing, it looks like the majority of them are structural, except for maybe the flooring. So that doesn't take into account any improvements in the interior to make it more desirable, right?
I mean, total, we're probably guessing about $800,000 to turn it into something that's
Yeah.
usable. I mean, make that a usable space, you'd almost would have to take the roof off, remove all the columns on the inside of the building, rebuild the roof, get the utilities put back in, up in the trussed roof. So it's not, it wouldn't just be a, new siding, new roofing, make it look nice, 'cause it's basically it's a basement. It's,
Sure.
exposed piping, exposed ductwork. It's an older concrete floor, which, the flooring in there now, the tiles are only 10 years old, but because of the moisture and everything in the building, we can't keep a floor on it. They keep popping up. They try painting the floors in the coat rooms, and it just keeps popping the paint just because the moisture and the building's kind of built into that hillside. Unfortunately, it's kind of past its time, and I mean, to invest, I might be better off just tearing it down a bare frame and just building it back up again. But if you do, you're gonna have a building that's not very large in an area that takes away from the sports fields, and it's not, don't have a nice, it's not enough parking for a nicer, bigger event. It's kind of still have a limited parking.
So the majority of these repairs would probably go unnoticed to the average person renting it. And you wouldn't, the average, the repairs that we'd be doing,
Yeah.
they would go almost, not unnoticed, but you wouldn't be able to charge more, or it wouldn't be more desirable to,
Yeah,
Host
basically for
events
the
there.
roofing and stuff, until we basically redo the whole thing.
yeah, because the interior looks
This
pretty
is just,
dated.
like you said, structural, a lot of the roof leaks, the wall repairs, the floor repairs, basically get to look like it is right now with,
Sure.
just cleaned up a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. So if we would go through with these repairs, we probably have to take it to the next level, I would assume,
Right. and
At
you-
some point.
And,
for
and right now, basically, we have Camp Olympic now. Basically, we're in competition with ourselves. We keep, now we added, Hills Lockridge was added 10 or 12, 15 years ago. Now, another upscale one at Camp Olympic, that whole barn was redone now. So now we have,
Well, and you have more rooms up
and more rooms
top
in the
there.
community center. So now we're creating more competition for ourselves. So instead of the buildings being booked out, now the buildings are, half booked, which then, they won't recoup the
Yes.
money as much.
So we have more than enough capacity for all of the meetings without using West Coast.
I believe so, yes.
I believe we do,
believe
and,
so.
sorry, Denise.
That's okay.
I was just gonna say, we just have a little bit of structural rate difference in the rooms that we have at the community center and other places as opposed to West Coast.
Right, and we feel that if we made the improvements that we're talking about, just the minor, well, not the minor, but the basic repairs to make it be functional, and to make it look that much nicer, we would probably be charging similar to what we are for Temple Barn. But even then, we're still not gonna recoup that,
Mhm.
For what the costs are.
Okay, so it sounds like the recommendation of staff is to demolish it.
It is at least my recommendation to the board. And, we had a discussion last week, and it was kind of when I asked the staff, okay, if the board would give $500,000 towards a project, would this be your first project? And I think really the consensus was, we have so many things that need addressed, that need repaired everywhere else. They should be our priority as opposed to this building at this point.
Okay, so I think that if we do demolish it, we ought to put in a bathroom facility and maybe equipment storage and snack. I don't know if you need a snack bar or
Snack
what.
stand.
That actually would be fairly easy, because if we reduce the footprint of the building, but we use the same.
Same facility.
Yeah. A third of the footprint, and just rebuild something there, a third of the footprint. We already have electric, we already have, the water, sewer, all the utilities, the gas, utilities are right there. So it would be almost, like I said, remove that and put a much smaller building with more storage for equipment, and one third of the footprint, and basically more of a utility building than a nice looking rec center.
That's right, but yeah,
Commissioner Whitler?
Well,
I'm looking at you from a historical perspective more than anything else, because, you know,
well, I
you're like
say
our
what I-
resident historian.
Well, just for one, it makes sense now how that building sets, that it was
Must be church.
an aborted, total construction job, and it's just a cellar, because that ceiling, if I remember right, that's low in there also.
Yes, it's low and the ductwork for the HVAC hangs, you know,
Right.
And when
along
it-
the walls. It's not
When
an
it goes
attractive-
on, it's not quiet.
Yeah, when you walk in, you expect to see people in there cooking, church breakfast in there.
Mhm.
That's just the kind of facility it is. It's not a nice rental like Camp Olympic is.
Right,
Because of the structural walls too, everything, high table.
and then, question Mari asked, our capacity can be met with our other facilities. So it's not like we're cutting ourselves short, that would go away. And, the 18,000, that, we can get it done for that. That seems low, but I don't know who searched that bid out. That would be,
That was just basically a general price. So I will have to go up for 3 bids for it, but just the contractor we used for other demolition in the township.
And they came back
went
at
out there,
18.
Looked at it. It's a fairly easy building. It's mostly just block, they haul away the top materials, and basically, because it's built into the hillside, they could almost crush the block in upon, on itself and then fill it. It's there's really no basement. It's kind of just remove the top of it, crush the block in, and then fill. So it's not a. big
so I'm in
demolition.
agreement with your team there, that it sounds like that building may be up. Hey, one question for you four, that pavilion, what do you think of that condition? The Westwoodville Pavilion,
The pavilion's actually in a pretty good shape. And that
Did we
was.
just redo it
we
not
just
too long
redid it.
ago?
Yes, it's.
we did, but that, okay, well, if you say
Yeah,
it's.
the pavilion's in good shape, and, and if we do maybe get rid of the rec center and make it more like a sports park, maybe, they could have team stuff there, make the pavilion look nicer. There's really nothing, the pavilion really doesn't cost us much to have there. Like I said, and the roof's good on it, the siding's been renewed, redone recently, so it's an asset that's really not costing us anything. It's kind of funny how 10 years ago, that was a pavilion and a rec center looking out over cornfields with nothing around it.
Yeah.
And now it's, people all wanted to rent there and have their parties there because you're out in the field in the middle, in the cornfield. Now,
Yeah, the
the-
pavilion does not. Because of the location.
Yeah.
Costco's right there.
Lennon, one more positive, it eliminates the parking conflict,
Yeah. on the
or
weekend.
our lighted fields.
Yes.
Which is, a nice facility.
Mhm.
I mean, them lights are only, what, 6, 7, 8 years old, if
Uh,
that.
If they're that old.
I rented it once.
What? You rented it once?
Yeah.
Oh, I used to rent the building all the time. I had a St. Patrick's Day party in there. I had a bunch of things. LMYA, that was where we met forever. That was our monthly meeting location. So I've been in that building a million times. And like I said, it's loud. When that air goes on, forget about it. It's like you got to jack everybody's voice up because it's a loud building. But Commissioner Ward.
I'm fine with proceeding as recommended.
Then I would plan on saying goodbye to the West Coastal Rec Center. But I do agree with Commissioner Robert. I think we have to look at what goes in its place. I think parking to a point, but I do think if you could put in like bathrooms and a snack stand or something, it makes it more of an athletic complex, which it is. Not a bathroom like Farmington Hills where, I feel like I'm looking at a prison movie, but something that's actually, attractive, would be nice if we can come up with.
Yeah, and I think I'm sorry.
But just one more comment.
Yeah.
That's why I asked about the pavilion.
Yeah.
If everything you mentioned could be incorporated in
Into
that
one thing.
structure, and we would get best of
More
both again.
space.
We get the parking, and we get President Higgins mentioned.
unfortunately, with the way the size of the building layout, we might not be able to get much parking in there.
Right.
Because when we'd have to almost eliminate that entrance we have onto
Mhm.
Hamilton Boulevard and lose that. And it's narrow. You might not be able to get enough.
Right.
Well,
Well,
the
and I-
parking
yeah,
conflict.
I don't even think parking's never been a big deal when it's just one thing. The problem is you couldn't have two things at one time, and that building would get rented by the day, not by the hour. So if something was in there on a Saturday or something was there on their Sunday, the park was shot for the whole day, no matter how long they used it. which was always a problem. And one of the things that we commented on is that fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, there is always spillover parking available behind that is not authorized, but people do park there. But I think it would be nice to, the other part of that building is the exit from that building is so dangerous with a car trying to come out onto Hamilton Boulevard, basically down an alleyway, and hoping that you don't hit somebody or get hit by somebody as you're coming out.
If need be, I mean, well, we can look at making that the entrance
Mhm.
only, and then that way have people exit. So the other side of the building, the back side of the building is shared with that resident.
Yes.
That's their driveway. So I don't know if we could somehow close that off to make that just a driveway. But I think if the
We can
building
look
is
into
gone,
it.
if the building is gone and it's, it's
Yeah.
more, less likely to attract people to come
Well,
in
and
that way.
you also could look at it, that's that person's driveway, we could put a fence up on our side of the property, so that even if you do drive in there, you're only gonna wind up in somebody's backyard, not our place.
Uh,
Mr.
while,
Robert.
while we're talking about underutilized buildings, what's the status of the church in East Texas?
Is it
What-
even safety? Wasn't there a time where, I know from a parking perspective, there was like no way you could go there, but
Right. The bathrooms.
Yeah, there's no compliant bathrooms. The bathrooms are in the back of the basement. There's no way to get to them. Kitchen is on a separate floor from the main hall.
So how much
meeting
are we
rooms.
spending to maintain that?
Fairly little because the utilities get shut off there. We're basically bare bones.
And the roof is fairly good?
for now.
Yeah.
I guess the question would be, is there some historical perspective to that building? Being a church, or I don't know the history behind it.
Well, and interestingly enough, on that one, that also has a deed restriction on it. I was approached and I still have to get back to the gentleman. He actually came about something else. He had asked if there was church space available to have a church. And I said, we had to look at the deed to see if we were able to have another occupant in there. So it hasn't moved any further than that, but, we're kind of stuck on that one as well because we can't really,
Not much you can do.
yeah.
I just asked Bruce about that about 3 months ago. And that property is not as it seems. Bruce can explain it better from memory. I think that parking lot, we don't even own that. That's not part of of that property.
Interesting. We own the parking lot, but the cemetery in the rear is a flag lot that belonged to a church that's now defunct. So there's the five, basically where the dumpster is like an 8-foot wide easement, or that's their property to get from the church to the parking lot. So we don't own the connecting property from the church, the
Where
parking
we-
lot to the church.
where
We
we
own both
park it
sides
is-
of it, but that strip right down in front of where the dumpster is, we don't own that.
I didn't know that till, 3 months ago. I was taking a walk and I was looking at that building.
Hmm.
It is chopped up. It's really chopped property. So that's another one. It's another one to work.
Yeah.
But I think on this one, we appreciate the feedback of the board. Our game plan would be to kind of wind down the rentals in there. This will give us enough time to kind of make sure we pick a point, maybe first quarter or summer of next year where we're not taking any more rentals, and then we'll just kind of wrap it up and advise the board, and we'll move forward when we can get some more ideas. That'll give us, at least we can generate some little money over there, but something while we look at a plan for how that could lay out with the building.
Currently it's through June.
Yeah, I would try to cut it off so that once the outdoor season starts up again, and those softball fields get used,
Right.
that they can use them on Saturdays and Sundays, start that. Until that point, there's no reason not to keep it open
Right.
if we have, rental revenue coming.
What's the condition of the current parking lot?
It's maybe about a 6 out of 10. It's not bad. It's not cracked. It's not alligated. There's really not that many structural issues with it.
It's not the potholes like it used to be?
No, it's actually fairly good. We got it sealed a couple months ago. It's actually in pretty good shape.
Okay.
There's really no issues with the lot.
Okay, item 4, review of budget request for Kratzer Farm improvements. This was Commissioner Beitler's request. Mr. Beitel?
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was good, and while we have the recreation and facility team here too, in case there's questions on that side of it, thought it's a good discussion to get me in the right direction for our budget planning. And definitely we can have some further follow-up on when I do my presentation for the capital improvement side of it. We did have some updated numbers pulled. Renee, should you have the map? You have that map? Yeah. pass it. So we had some updated numbers. There was some discussion with the board previously about working towards the fishing pier side, the ADA parking, potential trail connections in there. For us, no, you're good, Renee. Sorry. On the ADA compliance side and the pond, you're looking at about 340,000 with contingencies and engineering, soft costs. That would take about 9 months to permit out through the DEP. Same with if we did extensive trail side. The pathway that would connect the neighborhoods from Bogey and then the other direction and get down to the pond is about 435,000. So you're well over 700 for that side of it. I would just note for the board where we are on the proposed budget, and this will be great so I can hear that feedback. I have about $2,857,000 worth of basic capital improvements. This includes bridge on Gun Club Road for 550, culvert repair on Chestnut Street for 100. All the MS4 projects are another about 500,000. Replacing the Wild Cherry Park and playground for 500. Wild Cherry tennis court improvements for 150. A batting cage for Church Lane for 25. Some pool coving repairs for 35. Main building elevator for 165. Public Works AC unit for 35. Traffic light preemption devices for 30. So we're with those totals, we're about negative 562. So we'd have to spend some additional monies to make those things happen. The things that didn't make the funding yet at this point, facilities asked for a second tennis court to be done in addition to Wild Cherry to do Wescosville, because that's one of the ones that gets used a lot for 150. Some potential with this discussion, some additional lighting at Wescosville, potentially at the other softball field, as well as we had some discussions about lighting on Quarry on one of the baseball fields and that area. And then the pickleball complex, we kind of wanted to see what the response was for pickleball. So you're around about 600,000 for that. Security cameras for all of our parks and facilities were around 200,000 to 300,000. And then this project, like we said, about 760. The stormwater lining, I don't think we'll be ready yet for that. We're still doing videoing to see what we have for our long range plan. And then road resurfacing for us to hit our $1.3 million budget on that component that we would need to transfer like 350,000 in the liquid fuels fund to do an overall paving program. So those projects account for about 2.3 million as well. We do have a healthy fund balance. We have several bridges to replace plus the pipelining. We'll take probably half of that fund balance we have available. I understand that it's of course, the priority to get this project done as well as those pathway connections from Wild Cherry to Sauerkraut as well. So, for us, always we look as a staff, and like I said earlier, we're always promoting fixing what we have first, whether that's additional playgrounds or tennis courts or just field maintenance with fencing and all of those things. I understand the board wants to move forward with a newer project, but I think sometimes, at least I feel, and maybe the staff can speak as well, that our priorities are getting that plan to aggressively replace what's broken, so.
So let me, I want to say this in the right way because I don't think this isn't like a blame or anybody's at fault. I think in government, a lot of times we get stuck in the mud when it comes to executing plans. You know, for a long time, when I first joined this board and just prior to that, we were the community of plans. We had a plan for everything. There's the Kratzer plan, there was the rec plan, there was the trail plan, there was the police, study, there was the 2020 visioning committee. We literally had a plan for everything. And we went from a community that maybe the wool was pulled over our eyes by people in charge because nobody was asked their opinion, to a community where we had to get everybody's opinion before we did anything. Commissioner Beitler brought up the Kratzer Farm Plan at our last meeting. We've talked about the rec plan. Stan's put together a very comprehensive plan on things that need to be repaired. I think as a government, we have to start getting aggressive in fixing and improving the things that are seen. Commissioner Shoemaker mentioned before about West Coastville on the inside. All that work to the West Coastville building, nobody would see it. It would be there and it would be important. We don't care for the things that people see, and it's nobody's fault. There are other priorities. We need a comprehensive list of vehicles and equipment that says this is what we own, this is how long it should last, and this is what we have to plan for. Every year in the budget, there's a new truck or a new piece of equipment that gets thrown in there, and it sounds great. I think at times we replace things here because we have some sort of I don't know if you want to call it unidentified, or just this belief that, okay, we've made it 7 years, it's time for something new, or we made it 12 years, it's time for something new. Maybe we can get an extra year out of it. Commissioner Beitler has talked a lot about everything we've done for sanitary stores over the years, and we're still going to get hit over the head someday with a huge bill. So maybe there's a year that we don't do that stuff because we're going to get hit over the head, and we actually put it into things that people see and use. I think this is part of it. I think that if we can get to a point where you do the ADA parking and the pier for that pond and trail connections, I think it's a good thing because it's something people will see. I've never been a big fan of the Kratzer Park plan because I don't think you buy open space to then develop it into usable open space. It's open space, and that's what it sits there for. But there's ponds, and we could fish. There's a lot of communities that could walk there. There's probably parking on Bogey Lane up there for people who want to drive in and aren't using ADA accessible things. But Commissioner Beitler's right. This plan has been sitting forever, collecting dust. The Parks and Recreation plan has been sitting forever, collecting dust. We have to start moving forward because all of a sudden everything is going to be unusable. Or Commissioner Ward and I were talking before. We both lived here 20 years. Everything in my house is new now after 20 years. Everything. But the play structure that was at Farmington Hills when I moved in is still there. The one that's out at Quarry is still there. Eventually they got to go. And to replace them is a lot of money. And what we ask you to do as our facilities and recreation department is amazing on how little money that we actually give you to do it. So I think all of that stuff that you just talked about should be in the budget. And as part of our budget workshops, we should sit there and say, okay, what should we do now and what shouldn't we do? And how do we plan for the future? What I would challenge the staff to do, and this starts with you, Mr. Vital, and down to the staff heads, is have real data on real things. Not just, not just a checklist of, okay, here's a half dozen things that could be fixed, but actual, in the next 30 days, we're going to put together a list of every piece of equipment we own in public works, every vehicle that we own across the township. How long have we had it? How many miles are on it? What does the maintenance look on these things? So we know that we just don't ask for a new truck every year. We're asking for a new truck because this one's been fixed 15 times. Or, we also brought up the piece of equipment we bought to cut trails or to cut pathways. When's the last time we cut a pathway? I don't know. Have we cut any pathways?
They cut the pathway as a like brush cut, the pathways and stuff. They don't cut in pathways, but we do have,
Okay, so
we have sickles, brush hogs, everything that they do.
so we're
we do
clearing the
basic-
pathway.
We clear pathways.
Okay,
We
well,
don't-
that's
we
good.
don't-
What are we doing to address the trail system? Like, here's the big one from last year, and again, this is me just going off the top of my head. Where are we on the Hillside School sidewalk that we agreed to fund and they allowed us to put in, which was so nice of them because they can't afford it?
Waiting on the school, to accommodate their schedules. They wanted it done in the summer, so that put us to the summer of next year. Grant's been awarded in design, waiting to accommodate that.
Cena was surveyed out.
Yeah, I saw it was surveyed out too. That's why I'm curious. But I think I don't know. I've been in this position a long time, and for a while it seemed okay, but now as people mention things, it just seems like we're not doing anything to improve. And we got to do better.
Called a 5-year plan.
But here's the thing, I've seen 5-year plans that we don't stick to. Like, actually, maybe this is our own fault. Our budget workshops are fairly simple. We don't really argue over anything. We don't really cut anything. We don't add anything. It's just, here's the budget. That's what we're doing, and that's it. I think we need a budget where everything is in there. And if we're gonna have 2 nights of meetings and we're gonna go over capital projects, then we have to debate and figure out what's gonna get done. Because maybe this year, it's not all infrastructure based, it's recreation based, and maybe next year it's more infrastructure. But I know that we can look at what our fund balance is and get excited because it looks like a lot of money, but it's really not when you figure out what it's been earmarked for. But there's still a lot of money there. And if it means that we have to do an extra $500,000 this year, that isn't part of what we get in taxes and fees, then maybe we have to do that. But I think, I appreciate Commissioner Brightler bringing this up because I think this puts a spotlight on a lot of problems, not just the Kratzer Park plan, but all these plans to get them done. Okay, that's my soapbox. I'm done. Our meeting's adjourned. No.
Okay, and one other thing that is rec related. At our last commissioners meeting, someone came in and was objecting to us taking away their tennis courts and replacing them with pickleball courts. And actually, that same evening, my daughter and her family were driving around looking for tennis courts that were open, and they ended up going to the high school. But we have a list of each park and what the facilities are there. But we don't have a list of, I want to play tennis, what are the parks that have tennis courts? And is there a Gaga pit or something like that?
Yeah, there needs to be wayfinder.
Yeah, and so apparently there's one of those in the township, and my daughter was trying to figure out where that was and so forth, so.
Well, and the other problem you have, you're looking for a tennis court after dusk. We don't have it. We don't have one tennis court that's lit in the entire.
And the parks close at dusk.
And the parks.
That's park rules.
Right.
Are there any tennis courts that would be reasonable to put lights in?
Actually, you probably put them in most of them and not cause a problem.
I think the nicest area to put them in might be Hills of Lockridge,
Yep.
just because, that's as basketball and as tennis. It's.
You're away from.
But we're eliminating Texas.
Well,
Well, East Texas is going away.
we-
If I
we're-
remember
at
correct.
some point, it probably will because of where it is and the tree root issue at East Texas. We're not eliminating because we don't need it. We're eliminating because we can't maintain it, right?
This one we lost in the back.
Well, because we need a pickleball.
Right.
But so we did take away the only
Only lit.
lit ones, and we probably ought to come up with another place to have lit tennis.
Well, and again, those are things that we should have in our budget process, because until we put lights out at Quarry and then at West Coast, there was not one field or recreation, this part of this town, except for back here, that actually was ever lit. And believe it or not, the reason why we never had lights at the fields had nothing to do with bothering your neighbors, is that we didn't have anything big enough to change the light bulbs. And that's God's honest truth. There was not a truck that went high enough to change light bulbs, so we never put them up.
Quarry the line.
Well, yeah,
PPL,
you had to put the PPL line in.
well, I think they gave it to us.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
That was just, no bill.
And now with Musco Lighting, the maintenance is part of their package.
They'll come and change the
They
light.
come through the light bulbs, and actually their programming in their lights actually will tell you if the lights kind of lose efficiency after so many years. They know when the life expectancy, when they change. They could tell on their screen when there's a light bulb out, to send somebody out to fix it. I mean, they're very, very interactive, smart link, basically, that they control everything with. So it's
Nice when you corner the market, because, yeah, they're pretty much it. Okay.
Well, just
Commissioner
one more
Butler.
comment. The Kratzer Farm, I agree with you on that whole explanation, 100%. So I would like to see some kind of movement there this year.
Yeah.
And whether it just be the entranceway to a parking area and trail to the fish pond that's now stocked with fish.
Yep.
And even if it's a hiking path, not necessarily a walking path. Emmaus has them up behind the Exxon. They got walking paths that's what they are. They're paths, they're not bicycle paths. They're hiking paths. That's
Right.
the term they use. So that's what I would like to see.
Mr. Vital, I would tell you that as you build the budget, put everything in there.
Yeah.
Regardless what the cost is, and let us eliminate what needs to be eliminated, or rank order, or decide what's right, what's wrong. It's about time.
And we can do that. And I think, and with staff here as well, I think what we definitely struggle with is now we're to the point where a lot of these things they're not really the option not to do them, right? All of the playground structures that are now falling down and Jay's cannibalizing parts everywhere to try to make these things work. We're at a point where they definitely, as a safety thing, need replaced. All the bridges, free bridges are priority potential, like very poorly rated. So we don't really have a choice to say can't replace these 3 bridges now at this point. So I think sometimes that's part of the struggle internally of, okay, it's almost like we're triaging things instead of getting to the root cause to go fix those, so.
And I think the plus with the Kratzer Farm is all the access points are township roads.
Mhm.
Going in Bogey and the existing one to the barn.
Yes.
That's the township owned, that's in good shape, that road.
my concern with that. I mean, that is a rental. We have a really good tenant in there. I wouldn't want to bring in 1,000 cars.
Well, that's
Well,
just part of
And the
part of
thing is,
deal there.
you,
Just like the Camp Olympic House.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
bring 1,000 in there and there's a rental right smack in the middle of it.
the other thing is, you can always bring them in on the other side. If they came, let's just say you came in Bogey and there was a parking lot that was put right there, and then there was a path that walked,
Yeah. Like Brian Cisak and I this past, I think this spring, we walked everything. Actually, we walked with a gentleman from DCNR about looking at getting money and grant
Mhm.
funding for that, and basically his recommendations to the pathway and everything. So we have been
Yeah.
walking and talking. The Kratzer Farm plan I like, but there's some things in there I think we should scale back on. Taking the farm out of farming to turn into a park to represent farming.
Here's the plan if you want
But if we put,
read up on.
but
It
a lot of
covers
stuff
all
like-
areas. There's all options in here.
yeah, but like a lot of stuff like the solar farm, stuff like that. I mean, we should,
I didn't see a solar.
I think the bottom left
Top
corner
left.
was the top left corner. It's, and the CSA was great. 10 years ago, everybody was starting their own CSAs, but now people, there's kind of a fad thing. So, I mean, I would like to see us do something with the park, but I want to actually see it as still being an active farm. It's valued as a farm.
Here's the thing, I think you have to look at it this way. There is a plan that has a lot of options to it. We're gonna decide how far we take those options. I don't think you're gonna do all that stuff there. I agree, you don't create a park about farming when people are actually already farming it. But if you can develop a way to walk around it and walk
Yeah.
through it and become closer, that's a good thing. You know, if we have this pond that is stocked with fish and we can teach people how to fish, that's great. But I think we'll get there as a board to make those decisions of what gets done and what doesn't get done. Because not every plan gets implemented 100%.
And what, I mean, at Camp Olympic, we have, around the whole Camp Olympic track, we have a pathway. It's not paved, it's mowed grass. So basically, the cross-country team uses it. I mean, that, if we want to start off, that might be a simple way of just
Yeah.
making a 20-foot buffer and just, you know, smoothing it out and planting grass on it.
Right.
It's, I mean, it's not, because Camp Olympic, a lot of people, like I said, the cross-country team, and a lot of people use it just to go take a whole loop around the entire farm fields. Still a farm field, it's still usable by the tractors, still, but it's
Right.
accessible to everybody, and it's low maintenance, because just, you know, run the mower 2 laps around the farm field and we're done.
The most popular path in the valley is not McCadam.
Right.
Trails to Rails.
Mm-hmm.
It's used by hundreds and hundreds.
Okay.
Can I just ask one more thing, just for clarification? I'm
No.
trying to, trying to get maybe a feel for the board and what your thoughts are. Is anybody opposed to starting to use the open space revenue for that, for improvements or maintenance of open space? That is, part of that allotment. We have bought land. Do you feel it's the will of the citizens or of the board that that only be used for land purchases, or should we start to explore using some of those dollars for this open space improvement?
No, I think it should be used for what it's allowed to be used for. Yes. There wasn't a referendum saying we're gonna get this money and only buy land. We have a lot of land that we need to up. If we can use some of that money to do this here at Kratzer, that's phenomenal.
I think that'd be great.
That'd be great. Then we found multiple uses for that revenue.
I just wanted to make sure that you didn't feel a resonance if like a piece of land came up and then they said, oh, why did the township not
No, I
choose to
don't
go after that, if that was okay?
think that'd be a problem.
I have one more question,
That's,
directed towards Manager Vital. Do you think, as far as the parks are concerned, would there be any interest or demand for selling the naming rights to those parks?
Yeah, that's something we've talked about internally. I know, Kylene and Denise have been working towards some sponsorship opportunities right now on a smaller scale, but it is something that we've started to put together. So they're going down that path with some like a sponsorship guide and looking at small things now like concerts and the concerts in the park and things of that nature. But yes, like could there be some value on naming the gymnasium at the community center or picking this park like Kratzer and putting your name on it? So it's an interesting idea, and that's definitely I think worthwhile.
Which one would you like to sponsor?
Julie, did you have a question? Come on up, Julie, our resident ombudsman.
Might be
No open burning?
shy on things.
Basketball hoops?
Well, there were a few things that you mentioned that I want to throw out. As I recall, you're talking about, we need to track costs on everything.
Mhm.
As I recall, Public Works purchased software several years back, and they do that now. They're supposed to have all that. in a
We
computer.
have a list in next gen and we have a tracking. However, the next component of that is actually they set an accounting lifespan on those items. So they say, no matter what, after we depreciate expenses, we should be doing X. Where what we've been looking for and working with department heads to say, okay, look, a pickup truck should last 10 years or X number of miles. This is our replacement plan. And that's what we're trying to bring forward. So those things do exist, and we actually record track the maintenance on certain items. When they come out of the shop, there's a purchase order done and an allotment.
Well, I thought there was some of the stuff out there.
Yeah,
In fact, I was going to say, if
it was more
we're not doing
depreciation
it,
than
we should
anything
use
else.
the same software. I'm sorry, Brian.
It was more depreciation than anything else.
Okay, alrighty. A lot of the things too, also, you touched on so many things here. Commissioner Robert, you mentioned, not having a park list. We used to have a list that used to be online. I don't know if it's still there or not. I haven't checked, but a list that said which facilities had tennis courts and
Well, yeah, but the point is that if you're looking just for tennis courts, why not have it that there are these lighted tennis courts at this park and, so.
but I thought there was, and if there's not,
No,
there,
the list currently is, here is a park and these are the facilities there.
right,
Like instead of, you can't look it up by specific
right.
facility, you have to look it
Well,
up by the park.
There you go. You got a park advisory committee that your park and rec advisory committee, that's a job for them. Take everything, all the information. They don't even have to go out and do it, although that would be best, double check. And go out, give them a job and say, all this information is online. Now consolidate it by item instead of by park.
Yeah.
Not difficult. It can be done.
That's all I was bringing.
And it wouldn't cost. One of the things right away that I did want to check on though was, used to be there was a Board of Commissioners 5, 10, 20-year plan. Is there still? Now that I think about it, I haven't heard mention of it for quite a long time.
So we have the comprehensive park plan. It's actually due to be updated for parks. That's one of the things that we need to get on our radar to, I think the last one was done 13 years ago now, 12 years ago. So
But to me, a commissioner plan like that, you should be revisiting that every single year.
We
You
do-
look at it and say, whoop, these pegs didn't all get pulled this year, move them next year, some of them we have to move forward. That should be a constant repositioning of items that I don't think is happening, and this is probably the forum to do it. It's your workshop.
Well, we did do that with some, because that's why I was
Yeah.
bringing this up. This is the year of the Kratzer Farm next year.
Yeah, we do, there
We
was
did push
a,
this.
But all the things that were listed in the years before that, were those things all done?
they've gotten done. A lot of it's gotten done. It's not everything, but a lot of it's gotten done. They're just not, no, they don't stand out. They're there,
Yeah, no, I
they're
understand.
just not visible.
And a lot of stuff is that is necessary too, as far as I'm concerned, like even the items that were just listed off
Mhm.
that need to be done. There needs to be something else besides whether people can see it. I don't know, if it'd be nice if we had some kind of a rating system where we could say what the safety/liability rating is on all of those items. Because we know, I mean, Park and Rec is near and dear to my heart.
Mhm.
But my first priority on that committee always was township liability.
Mhm.
It's the safety of individuals, but it transfers directly into our liability. So some items, well, yeah, we can put a little further down, but other things, hey, depending on, it doesn't matter the cost. It matters what our, what's the right word here? Not just our liability, but our risk. Thank you. What our risk factor is. And I think that's so important at this point. And we have done some of the things I know that, you were talking about that maybe they weren't big items, but like lighting at the parks and that.
Mhm.
People forget that we didn't always have that. That has been accomplished now.
We've
And-
gotten rid of the 50-gallon drums in most of the parks as garbage cans too, which was always a favorite one of mine.
This is true.
Wild cherry parking was a big one.
Yeah,
True.
we got
Yes.
that done.
Yes. But, and then coming to Kratzer now, the only thing is after, again, you can make your plan out, but every year you need to be revisiting what you're looking at, including what factors around it have changed. And when I think about Kratzer now, because it was mentioned at the last meeting, so I kind of started thinking, all right, I was on that committee. What all did we talk about? Well, things have changed since we put that plan in place. And some of the things now to consider with Kratzer is crime level has changed in the township. So how is that going to affect what it's going to cost us? Not just maybe insofar as putting in some kind of cameras,
Right.
but liabilities to homeowners that back up to the property. The other thing is now there's a commercial facility across the street from it. People are going to be crossing the street. You're going to have to make sure that there aren't issues with that. And we know Willow isn't a good road to start with.
Right.
So before anything is developed there, because I can see, the first thing that comes to my mind is, nope, people are going to drive in there and park and hike across Willow.
Sure.
You don't want to be opening up township to that. So those things all have to be thought about before we jump into moving forward. I mean, I love the idea of moving forward on stuff, but
Yeah.
let's not back ourselves into a corner on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie, as always.
You have more?
She's
No,
now she's
that's it.
getting
No,
ready
I'm
for the
just, I'm
second
gonna,
part of the meeting.
I'm assigning,
Okay.
because nobody knows who I am.
Okay. I think we're good on that for now, so is staff done?
Yeah, they are. Miss Gill here is here for the board. She is
Welcome.
our new assistant.
Heard wonderful things. And not just from Denise, from other people.
I did want to introduce her, but I couldn't break in
Sorry.
now. So it's happy to have her.
Excellent. All right, without objection, I'd like to make a small amend the agenda just slightly to move item 8 up to next, if possible. Is there any objection? Hey, listen,
Not from the chief.
Dave, I'm trying to take care of you here as much as you happen to get on like the most busy agenda we've had in about 6 months.
First, you want me to stay here for the,
Yeah, if you could.
okay, come on, Dave.
Okay, next up, discussion of potential agreement with Macungie Fire Department for fire service.
And
Mr.
so-
Vital.
Yeah, so we don't even really need the chief, but I'm glad he's here just to review where we are. I wanted to make the board aware, the township was approached via the borough and of course the fire service here about the township volunteer fire department working to be the primary responder in the borough. With our internal discussions with the chief and the president, it's something that we're supporting on at least the manager side to move forward. We've had a draft agreement. It's not really done yet at this point. I have to still share it with the fire department. Such things in there are making sure that the township receives appropriate compensation for the workers' compensation policy, knowing the expectations or having the board be aware that, of course, with this, the township is responsible for providing that workers' compensation insurance. So basically, township volunteers would be completing that service. I'm sure the chief would tell you at this point, they're already, whether they want to be or not, I'm sure, response agency there, while the borough works through their fire service requirements. Some of the other things though that we had included are pretty standard for what we already see from the department. Things like reporting on calls, reporting on how finances are spent. Those are all things we get in depth now at this point. The borough wanted to make sure that they would receive that type of presentation. And I said, we get that all the time with supporting documentation. So that's in there. There's also a couple provisions, financial, one that the department receives a $70,000 contribution from the borough for whatever they needed for, as well as the township. We're going to be asking, unless the board wants a different number, requesting $40,000 in contribution. I basically took the fire service budget, divided that by the number of residents we have, made that the per resident fee to get that number. We would use that to cover that workers' compensation insurance, the operating expenses that we have at Brandywine, and the incentive program to make sure there was some additional incentive monies for the fire service, and then put some of those monies away for future equipment replacement fund to replace both the township aerial and the tanker pumper. So also it would allow for the fire department to receive the relief monies from the borough in their entirety and allow the fire department to solicit donations in that area. For us, we would want to make sure that we'll have some ordinance updates to recognize them as the fire department and the relief association for the township. We already have a fire services agreement. So this would just kind of put that in the ordinance now as well, that they are the responding agency. Wanted to make sure the board was okay. I know the borough needs this fairly quickly. Through legal, David's been helping me. We also have a another consultant on legal that has a fire service background, that's part of the team. So we're kind of waiting on them on some coordination back and forth. But, wanted to make sure everybody was okay with the idea before we, went forward. We think it's a good opportunity, to provide service. We had looked at, oh, there you go, length of time, potentially, a year to see how things work out. But we're also willing to go multiple years. I don't know what the borough is going to choose to do. They want to do one, or they would look to do, additionals. I would think in the agreement, we would place, up to 3, like kind of 1-year renewals. So to see how it's working out and make sure, our people are supported. So.
Questions for Mr. Vital?
Is the compensation included in there adequate to cover the fire department costs?
At this time, I think so. If we would make some additional, future purchases, things we need to be mindful of, we will need to potentially, increase that number. There is an escalator, a 5% escalator each year that they would continue, at least on the township side. I feel pretty comfortable with discussions with the fire department that their number, gets them where they need to be, at least at this point in time. So,
Okay.
we didn't want to ask for 90, it's things like,
Sure.
Alberta's paying 70, get into this, why are we paying? That's how we get the borough of Alberta gives us 100% of state league contribution, which is saying when we're asking for funding, and Alberta also lets us, the residents fund drive, just like we do in the township, like we like to do.
Okay, and adding the additional service is not going to stress the volunteer firefighters too much?
Their call volume is not astronomically high. And when you were approached, up there,
You're loud.
When we were originally broached on the topic to provide a presentation to the Borough of Macungie Fire Service, part of our internal conversation was the township surrounds them on 3 sides. So if not us, who? Assuming they want to change. They may get all this in front of them, say, you know what, we're staying with what we have, which is certainly an option to them if they choose to go that route. But, in the short of it is, for somebody else to take it over, we would just be in there all the time, probably anyway. So if we're going to be in there all the time anyway, we might as well run it the way we see fit, and I'll say get the financial reimbursement for providing that service.
Okay. No other questions.
Any other questions?
Just the status of their department now is
Yeah, well, like
what? Favorable?
Manager Vital said, is we're on 100% of their dispatches right now. So if they go, we're going.
So it's poor right
I don't know what the status of their membership is and all that other stuff. The borough, out of, if nothing else, a high level of redundancy, added Lower Macungie Fire Department to all their running orders in the borough. So there's a cat stuck in a tree, we're going with them. There's a spill in the road, we're going with them. If it's building fire, we're going with them. So 100% of their dispatches will involve us, and that. And like we said to the borough, let's say 6-7 weeks ago when all this started, is, and the comp center even reiterated, is what they have in place now is a temporary. It's to cover the time from when they feel they have a problem to whatever the resolve is. What's set up now can't be, I'll say, a permanent solution. It's just until things are worked out and they make a decision of which direction they want to go.
Yeah, and they're working through some analysis on their end as a borough, and I don't want to speak for them, but that's why we've been kind of engaged in this process to, see what assistance we could provide while they do that analysis.
And lastly, like we explained to them when I did the presentation a few weeks back, was we're not moving LMFD assets or township-owned assets into the borough. We are responding from the same three existing stations that we respond from now. So the township commissioners and the township residents don't have to worry about, well, why is a fire truck leaving Lower Macungie and getting plopped in the borough? We told them that if you want us to do it, it's gonna be out of the three existing stations.
All right,
Very good.
very good.
Thank you. We'll work to, I owed the chief a draft here. I'm gonna try to get that done right away. And then I'll get that to the board as well for our, probably potentially for our next meeting, but just want to get it on your radar. So,
Hey, Chief, I just got one question. Not, does our equipment go under the underpass? Brookside out here?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, and then, that's the
I
way.
was thinking of the train track.
Well, to be extremely short, I plan, if we take it over, to divide the borough into three pieces. The railroad tracks being a dividing line. So you'll have the stuff south of the tracks, which will be, the first station in line will be Brandywine, the second station in line will be Albertus, the third station in line will be Wescosville. The stuff on the other side of the tracks, Brandywine's still first, but then Wescosville becomes second and Albertus is third, because they can just write that down Brookside under the bridge and cut over, and then the train isn't an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Super. Chief, thanks a lot.
I appreciate sliding that up.
No
Thank you
problem.
very much for the rest of your night.
You too. Okay, moving back to item 5, discussion on yard waste permits and future changes.
Yes.
Vital.
So I just want to get this on the board's radar. I appreciate the discussion from the last two items. So this could be as extensive as you want it to be, kind of working through the budget as we've seen. And I think it's important for us, both as a staff and board, to make sure the residents are aware of the potential upcoming situation with garbage in general. We've seen with our recent neighbors, the 50 to 62% increase in garbage hauling. I think for us that's from your, $300 and some garbage bill now to potentially a $600 garbage bill. I think we need to talk about this as much as we can and as often as we can to put this out. And this is just one component as we work through the budget to have the board think about what we can do specifically with the yard waste side. So we have proposed actually to spin the sanitation budget, solid waste, out of the general fund budget back into what was originally years ago the 04 solid waste fund, for two reasons. Number one, I think it's going to give us a better overview of how that's functioning for us. And number two, I think the staggering costs that we potentially may see, currently that budget's around $3.3 million in the general fund of the $15 million spending plan. If that would balloon to a $5 or $6 million budget, I think it's more transparent for the residents to see that pass through as it goes in and moves forward. The interesting part that we have and offer as a service is the Yard Waste Center. For those residents that aren't aware, I know the board is. We have a site behind the Public Works building where we currently issue permits to township residents to drop off yard waste. This yard waste is then processed. It's some of it's ground up to make mulch and things of that nature. It's trucked around. We take some of the leaf waste at leaf collection time, as well as the yard waste, and we make the humus out of it. It's stored at our other offsite area by Quarry Park. So there are some logistics in taking the materials that are dropped off, processing it, moving it to another component. And we wanted the board to think about the impact that this yard waste operation now has on us. So we have attendants that man the station over there. So there's some salaries with that. We think there's about 2,000 man hours from several public works individuals as we document their time spent on yard waste and recycling. moving that material around and processing it. And really, we've tried to wrestle internally as a staff. Currently, people that pay a garbage bill, part of that very minute garbage bill, I think it's like $8 a quarter, goes to the yard waste type recycling center. So that's subsidized by ratepayers. With the potential garbage bill and where that's going to be, we almost look at it as, is the yard waste an additional service that if people would want, there should be a potential cost for that. So we've thought about implementing a paid permit system. We have around 7,000 permits for people in the yard waste center. They don't expire. Once you're issued that, you get a sticker and a paper permit that you can use on your vehicles if individuals aren't as familiar. However, we don't limit size of loads. We have people that bring multiple dump trailers. We have larger trucks. I feel, we've gotten to a point where this is more than household yard waste. We're having these items of now extreme bulk, which leads to more processing time, more hauling time, more labor, more equipment that we need. So, with that, we're talking about how we can come up with a card system, almost like the pool and the community center, where if you want to become a member, you have to go online, you get a card, you have to have that card with you. It has your picture on it. And it renews every year. And it's important that I wanted to get this on the board's radar, just because if we would choose to consider doing something like this, we need to get moving now for the January permit time to let our residents know that there's going to be a potential change. So we feel at some point the operation and what we need to have out of the permitting is about $50 per permit on those 7,000 permits. So we understand that that's potentially controversial because the residents might not be used to that. We also are trying to be creative and say, all right, is there a potential where you get a permit, but then maybe the amount of yard waste you buy almost like an old school lunch ticket that we can punch when you go in to say, all right, maybe it's $20 for the actual permit, but for you to go there and visit us, you're going to have to come and buy an additional trip card. So if you bring a dump trailer, that's 2 punches. You come in your regular car, your pickup truck, that's 1 punch on the card. And when you fill up the card, you have to come back here and buy another card. So we're trying to look at different opportunities internally. We're not really sure how to do it yet at this point, but looking for thoughts.
Yes, Commissioner Robert.
Okay, one thing is I would prefer to see just the part for the yard waste separated out as a different line item in the township quarterly billing. So you would have trash and sewer and yard waste. And so then the $50 bill, if that's what we establish it to be, yeah, it's only $12.50 a month, a quarter. So,
well, and that's definitely a suggestion we talked about. We do have residents that don't receive a bill because they may be in a private community, and we're trying to identify, is that better to just issue the permit then and make them come here, or make them go online to get through the recreation software pay that $50 and get your permit? Because it also then doesn't give us the ability to make them come back and prove that they're residents.
Fairways, is an example.
It would be. That's one of the communities. You could technically come and dump your yard waste.
So let's just go back to what Maury's saying for a second. Let's say the first bill of the year, everybody who gets a bill, there is a permit in there. It's in their bill for 2024. That means anybody who comes up to dump stuff up there that doesn't have a permit that says 2024 is redirected back to township, say you need to get a new permit for this year. That would cover the problem where they don't get a bill.
And actually, Renee, that was one of Renee's ideas because that's what she's used to. So, that,
Good idea.
right.
Because they're not paying extra to us because it's already in their bill. So here's your permit for the year. And again, all these are predicated on the fact that we have to communicate this to people because the staggering number of people who have no idea what goes on around here continues to amaze me. But I guess my other question is, what other towns or municipalities around us offer a similar yard waste service?
Upper Macungie, Emmaus,
Emmaus,
Salisbury,
Everybody basically does.
And
downtown. Now, if you look at Albertus and as Stan always says, Albertus they're offering though is a dumpster. So you can't come in and like dump trailer everything. You have to like pick your stuff up and go up the stairs and like dump it in. And that's how they limit these massive quantities that we're seeing.
And when I was actually at South Whitehall, looked at theirs set up this week, last week. And they actually have dumpsters that are hauled by Waste Management, but it's the same thing. People have to put the stuff in the dumpsters and they don't collect grass. So they basically, it's brush only and it has to go in the dumpster and it's hauled away like Albertus is. There's nothing basically put on the ground that has to be picked back up and then processed. It's put in there and hauled away. And the thing, a lot of the problem is we have the yard waste site is not only is it the residents that use it, it's the residents contractors.
So
It's the, oh, like, you know, I'm doing a job for this person. Here's her car, you know, it's like, here's her card. She's a resident. She's with me. I'm dumping like, you know, entire pine trees here because I worked on her house, and that we have a lot of that. We have a lot of, you know, contractors that, you know, they're not generating 4 dump trailers, a week from their townhouse.
Yeah, and
every week after week. I mean,
Yeah, and unfortunately, right, like they are charging our residents for, for that service. And then we're providing it to them for free. So they're making that money that they charged our resident to go dispose.
That's why I think something like a per usage fee would eliminate that, or at least help us recoup our
Yeah.
costs.
And the per usage ought to be per minivan or SUV, not,
Yeah, he's like, I think, the, First Regional Compost Facility up in Nazareth, I believe, up like Northampton County, basically Bethlehem area, that they have it's per vehicle. Like it's $3 for a car, it's $5 for a pickup, it's 15 for a flat trailer, it's 25 for a dump trailer. I mean, they have a whole fee schedule of what you need to pay to dump there. But unfortunately, it's more of a commercial operation, which we aren't, but we need to find some way to limit the amount of people using the site, just using it all the time. I mean, there's some mornings where the cars are backed up, onto Brookside Road, waiting for the site to open in the morning, just, for a lot of small stuff. We almost have to educate people on how to reduce their amount of recycling of grass and stuff that we can take in.
so what, okay, we already have the access stuff, or, the admissions to the pool and all that stuff. And why can't we just set yard waste up on that and have them do a flash a card when they come in, and that records they were there. And then if there's a size issue, then, that could be addressed in that system as well.
I was thinking of something almost like a Dave and Buster's card. You go there, you charge your card. You go play this, it's $5 for this, $2 for that. And when your card gets to a certain lower limit, then you basically you're automatically on file where it then renews your card, or like the turnpike. Basically, something like a system where you use it as it gets your reserve gets low, it automatically recharges.
I'll be honest with you, I'm indifferent on this subject for one reason only. I don't know if there is a solution. There's no one solution. No matter what you do, people are going to get pissed off. Somebody is, because they're not going to understand it, and why can't I do this anymore? I used to do this all the time. This is a problem. So I'm in a place where it's like, whatever you want to come up with, I'm going to be fine with. The one thing that I will say though is, whatever system we decide, we need to have better people working the gate. And I mean this in a non-discrimination kind of way, but I can't have an 85-year-old guy arguing with somebody about you can't come in here because it becomes a problem. Or the guy last year who was walking around in his walker and his orange bucket picking things up with his feet, like, it's not satisfactory for that type of job.
And I think, where we're struggling, and that's another component of this, we've advertised now for yard waste attendants, and we're getting very few applicants. So how do we then implement technology with the people that we do have to make it as least complex as possible? So we need that component of, additional employees at some point to even keep this thing moving, where,
Either that or I would even tell you to shut it down. No, you'd have your permit and that's it.
yeah, ultimately, the best thing for us would be to reduce the size of this operation, but we know with 50,000 trips,
Yeah.
we're going to hear a lot of feedback. So yes, at some point. So we should have road construction started, or hopefully started in October, to get back to the new compost center.
You almost have to put in whatever communication there is that this is your permit for, it has 2024 on it. And you can only disperse or drop off things from the vehicle it's attached to. Not, this is my vehicle and the guy in the truck behind me is with me. It doesn't work that way. It has to be in your vehicle. Because,
Like an easy
yeah, basically, it's not like, here's my card. These 3 guys are with me. They were doing work at my house. We're gonna drop it off, or someone takes their card. It's gotta be on the car that you bring. So if mine's a pickup truck, it's gonna be on my pickup truck. Somebody's a minivan, it's on their minivan. It's not just, you can't move it from car to car.
That is kind of the issue with our current systems. We have the sticker on the car, but then we also allow them to bring the piece of paper
Yeah.
if they take their spouse's car or something, which.
They do allow that.
And I wouldn't. I would be like this, that makes it harder to bring large quantities. Unless you're driving around a dump truck all the time.
And that's what's happening. I mean, we are seeing repeated over and over and over. I don't want to say offenders because it's open, but you can't tell me that this many people in this municipality have yards where they have 5 dump trailer loads worth of stuff every couple weeks. I get it if you have all your landscaping redone, maybe that's a one-time shot and you're good for a couple years, but it's a lot of volume.
Limited to a passenger vehicle. Non-commercial vehicle.
Well, it is, it is non-commercial vehicles now, but,
Not if it's a dump truck, it's not.
well, dump trailer, there are a lot of people, a lot of people have dump trailers. But unfortunately, you see the same dually pickup trucks with no markings on the door, pulling a dump trailer, coming in here multiple times a week. It's not, no business markings, no nothing on it, but like you said,
Right.
Where does this guy live that he's got that much stuff in his yard that he has to?
Well, he doesn't.
Another related issue is we might have shot ourselves in the foot by providing too good a service to the customers associated with the curbside yard waste pickup. That if we don't, when we are negotiating the next trash thing, there's lots of people that have told me how much they like the curbside yard waste. And how are we gonna deal with that?
Yeah, we'll have to, as we prepare the spec, that'll be an alt item in the bid to see if anybody will bid on that service. That'll be laid out as a separate line item to see if there's a response or not. And I think the important part, as you talk about that and the curbside, just remember a lot of these places have, where we have an exceptional service now, where we have unlimited garbage. We should know that this will probably be, one toter, 95-gallon toter instead of unlimited garbage. So residents may see their a $500 or $600 garbage bill and now be restricted on what they can put out at the curb. So that messaging that we have, I feel that we should just at least give the board an update each month of the workshop and everything else.
Well, and something I said to Bruce, and I think Rich said the same thing to him. We need to start communicating that message now through any means necessary, whether it's putting an insert in their bills whether it's having a special page on the website, whether it's a full page ad in the quarterly newsletter, whatever it is, so that people understand that starting next August, you're likely to see a garbage bill double and services go down, because that is what's going on. And it's a pass-through cost. It's not that we're setting the standard. It's what we're told it's going to be. But we need to be so far ahead of that. It can't happen August 1st and we let them know on August 15th. Like, it's going to be a big, big deal.
Maybe
Because
we-
have it so good now.
Yeah.
We have it so good.
Maybe we can even reference the article that was in FMZ about,
Mhm.
Southwood. So people, you know,
Yeah. Say this is coming to a neighborhood near you in the not too distant future.
And I think there's some other, I'm sorry to
Is
interrupt.
that
you.
August first though? What you said is.
Our
August-
contract's up in August.
August 31st.
Is
August
there an
31st.
extension option?
There,
There is, however, we haven't heard from the company if they're gonna execute on the option. There are 1-year extensions
It's their-
available.
They're out.
prerogative.
We haven't received notification that they are going to opt out or opt in of the extension, which they owe us per the contract. Yeah, 6 months ahead of time.
We should know.
By,
so
we'll know by March.
Yes.
it would be great if
Be great. Listen, we've always had a great contract with Bank, and the way it's been laid out with the year options have always worked well. Even the last time we had to negotiate with them, it wasn't even a negotiation. But whatever's going on in the karting industry right now, it's gotten very expensive.
Yeah, not enough labor, for people to be out of the truck. They need to move towards toters. They need to move towards that
the fuel
mechanized,
surcharge,
yep, fuel surcharge.
with everything.
the waste,
Okay.
the dump site costs, and like the grass contract now, limited display places that take grass, which might be an issue with our upcoming contract, is the place that a contract with this, for this current contract, it runs out, and First Regional is no longer accepting grass. So right now they said only about 10% of the residents use the grass option.
Yeah, I find it interesting that for the yard waste, they go around with a garbage truck, and the grass, they go around in a pickup truck.
Yeah, and there's that very few people that use the grass that actually take 2 pickup truck loads out. Issue with the grass is people saying you have to put it outside, put it in a craft bag. Well, if you get collection once a week, you get collection on a Wednesday, if you cut your grass on a Sunday, now you're having grass sitting out there in the curb in a wet bag by the time they come get it Wednesday. So it's,
This is the first year that I didn't bag grass once. That's
and
because I don't have a
think
bagger.
there's also a lot of education, there's a lot of articles out there about basically grass cycling, recycling your grass, using mulching mowers, cutting it up, and it's better for the lawn, it's better for everything than bagging it and
Yeah.
dumping it somewhere. So hopefully get the recycling portion of that
You.
sold to the residents more, so they don't bring as much of the grass to us.
While we're talking about yard waste and so forth, the monster chipper, is there a company that we can hire to bring in a chipper on a scheduled basis and do the chipping and not have to worry about the deal with the antique that we have with Emmaus?
There are some companies, however, they become few and far between. I know we've had tried to set some of those up, but this industry, they're not very responsive. Stan, do you know where we are with the last guy we used that came in?
I think it was for us, each time would take about $16,000 to spend 3 days chipping here.
Which is still more economical than $1 million machine,
Yeah.
as we talked about, but it's hard sometimes getting them on the schedule because there's so few people that do
There's
that.
so few people that do it because of the cost of machinery, and with all the new developments that go on, lot clearing and cleaning big fields and stuff like that, they're really not coming to chip here for a few days doing yard waste when they could be out clearing 400 acres for big developments. So a lot of the companies you have to get them from 30, 40 miles away to come in here to do it. for
Well,
us.
It's definitely something we do though, because I think it's beneficial to have that component.
I think it would be something worthy to follow up on. Because that big chipper is going to break down sometime. And
It already caught on fire once, and that's why we had to use contractors to utilize during that period it was down. So yeah, 100%.
okay.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So say we did make some major changes to the yard waste permits. Do we know what a break-even point would be to charge the residents?
Yeah, I think it's that it's
Okay.
that $50 side for 7,000 permits. So if we lose some permits, then we would have an issue. We'd have to raise that up. And that's why we were thinking internally, if we went by trip, we know we have 50,000 trips. At some point, we don't want to take cash over there, but if we sold the trips, then that would be more based on usage and give you a lower permit fee. If you only come there once a month or once every 2 months and you give us $20 and buy a punch card that has 10 trips on it and you use them, once a month for the entire year. Whereas a heavy user, now they're going to pay the same $50 that maybe one of you gentlemen pay to go there with like one pickup truckload. So those are the things we're struggling with, how to make that fair.
Any other questions on this? All right, moving forward, review draft ordinance amending the official map. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, commissioners. So as I had mentioned previously, at planning commission meetings, to the board, we've been working hard at the staff level, as everyone is aware, and the board has been working hard as well in terms of looking at our successes in terms of land preservation at the township. This official map update does 3 things. One, it notes the acquisitions and or preservations that we have undertaken and succeeded at over the last several years. So it accurately reflects it. 2, it does the same thing for infrastructure improvements. And you'll see that the Sauerkraut Lane project has been removed from the map because it's well under construction, closing in on completion. 3, we should begin asking ourselves what other properties for open space preservation or acquisition of development rights for open space we're interested in pursuing. What I have produced here is basically a draft official map for your consideration and potential moving along to reviewing authorities. And our recommendation at the staff level is to cast the widest net we possibly can. Does not necessarily mean that the township or the board needs to acquire each and every one of these properties, but it gives you the option to look at it. And basically, we've done it based off of prime agricultural land that remains in the township, prime forested space that remains in the township, and lots that would pose particular concern due to combination of them being both open space currently and being part of a watershed where it could contribute to flooding or problems that we see during storms. So again, normally what we had done in the past was look at a couple of lots of interest. This one really casts the net wide, and that's on purpose. That gives you the ability to look at your options, and for future boards to look at their options as properties either come up for sale or a land development may be proposed on. So it's our recommendation that this move forward. I'm happy to take any questions, but obviously we do need to keep our eye on the future now about what our future potential goals as far as land preservation will be for the township.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Jones? I would just say whatever we think could possibly be beneficial is on there, and then we make a decision when that time comes.
Absolutely, because we could say, okay, well, this has come up for sale. We're not really, congratulations, we're good, but it does come up for sale, and we get the right to at least enter the conversation. So,
Nate, can you just real quick, something on timing? Can you just see when we'd be looking to?
yeah, we are trying to move on this, obviously. So the ask that we have right now for you is that we can get in a position where we would send this off to our planning partners at the Southwest Comp Plan, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. They all have 45 days. So I'd like to get it to them. And then during that review process, we will be able to advertise, and we would be looking at having a hearing either in the end of November, I think, or the beginning of December.
So it'll be on Thursday's meeting?
Thursday's meeting to authorize submitting it to our planning partner.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Item 7, review draft ordinance amending chapter 27A, stormwater management.
This is another zoning related matter. This is something that engineer McAdam, myself, Zach Graves, Vince Tranguch, we've all talked about at the staff level, Brian McAdam, Brian Sisak. I mean, essentially, the way our ordinance is currently written, you are allowed to put stormwater management basins and facilities, and in some cases, certain roads, in the floodplain. And we've seen what's happened after lots of thunderstorms and Isaias, and it's not a good idea. So we would like to amend the ordinance to ensure that in addition to building of structures and homes and businesses, et cetera, that those infrastructure related items are not permitted in the floodplain either. We have walked into basins that are as tall as I am, or I'm sorry, we have walked into sinkholes that are as tall as I am in basins that are in the floodplain. So it's just something to keep in mind from a health, safety, and welfare perspective. There's really nothing else to it other than getting out as much infrastructure as we can from those areas that we know that are endangered by floodwaters.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Jones on this? Okay, item 9, review planning commission applications for vacancy with term to expire January 1, 2025. Ms. Fox?
Yes, there are 3 applicants that we had interviewed before. We didn't receive any other applications, but the 3 applicants is Michael Siegel, John Simonich, and George Stouty. So this would be to replace John Hammer, who had to resign from the Planning Commission for personal reasons, and his term will expire January 1st, 2025.
So this will be up for recommendation on Thursday night's agenda, correct? Okay.
And do we want to talk about it?
Absolutely. And any questions, comments, questions?
Okay, a comment. It takes 2 to 4 years for a new person on the planning commission to understand what the role of the planning commission is. And there are 3 current members of the planning commission that have been serving less than 6 months. So, Wes is the only one that's been serving more time than that. So as far as this particular round, I think selecting one of the people that has had experience in planning type issues would probably be a good idea. So that would be Mike Siegel or George Doughty. And I would support George Doughty as being a member on the planning.
Any other questions or comments? Make the recommendation Thursday.
Okay.
Okay, moving forward, manager updates, resident concern for paint fume smell.
Thank you. I just have that item and one other one, just to update the board. We did have a resident at one of the recent board meetings that did complain about potential smells in the air. I didn't really know what to do with it, so the solicitor assisted me with that. We found an appropriate contact. I did reach out to that contact. They advised me there's like a 1-800 number that you can call for the state. The DEP has and maintains, as well as their website. There's an online complaint form. So I did follow back up with a resident. So just want to let the board know, figured out what we had to do with that and advise the resident in case they come back in the future. So that's the update on that. Just one of the other things that came in today that I didn't have on here for next meeting, I would like and request the board consider 2 TE 160 forms. As you remember, those are the forms that allow us to change the traffic signal permits. This is for the traffic emergency preemption at Cedar Crest and Lower Macungie, and Cedar Crest and Riverbend. So with that, I think that the board, should be willing to move those forward. I'll have those on the agenda for your consideration. So all I have, unless there's there's more questions for me since I took everybody's time this evening.
Okay, any questions for Mr. White?
Just one quick one. On the paint fume smell, have we heard back from the complainant? about-
We have not,
So maybe that's no longer an issue, I presume?
Potentially, I don't know. I referred them to the DEP
Right.
numbers in the office with a written letter, so
I was just
I didn't
curious.
hear back.
Thank you.
And they probably won't give me an update. They told me as they do their investigation, what they may find on certain days, they may not find on others. So they're going to encourage if the resident calls, they want to make sure that they kind of turn in that item right away so that they can have somebody go out and address it while it may be happening. So in case the conditions change. So
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Vital? Okay, are there any department reports tonight? Seeing none, any public comment on agenda topics?
Shaking a head no.
Seeing none. With that, I'll just remind everybody that our next scheduled board meeting is Thursday, October 5th at 6 p.m. here in this room. And with that, we are adjourned. It's a long one.
See you, Brian.
But it was a good meeting.
Take care, Brian.
Good night,
See you, Brian.
gentlemen and lady. Take care.
Yeah.
Long.